Okay, I am way too excited to show you this because I think it is the coolest thing I have ever made with mini watercolor paintings. What starts out as a bunch of mini watercolor paintings turns into something completely unexpected in the end. Trust me, I guarantee you will not see what is about to come. So don't leave too early because the final reveal is my favorite part. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Now, before we can get to my fun project, we obviously need some mini watercolor paintings. And whether you do something similar to my final project or not, mini watercolor paintings are a ton of fun. So you should try these anyway. I'll just pull out my supplies really quickly. I have some watercolor paints, a paper towel, some clean water, and then of course some brushes. And because we're painting so tiny today, we obviously need some small brushes. I have here a number 1 and a number 2 round. These are from my Craftamo subscription boxes actually, which I will leave a link for in the description of this video if you're interested. But whether or not you have these, you'll just want to pull out some tiny brushes that can paint really small. Now, I actually did a video a while back where I painted in this little mini watercolor sketchbook, so if you'd like to go check that out, those are some really fun, simple, quick mini paintings you can try. It was a lot of fun to do. This was actually my first attempt at painting mini, and I really had a ball. And since then, I've also painted other little mini paintings on just separate scrap pieces of paper. I've just framed them in here for fun. Like I say, sometimes it's hard to know what to do with mini paintings, but that's why you are going to love my final reveal so much today. Something great about painting mini is that you don't need a lot of paper or paints to do them with. I just have scrap pieces of paper that sometimes I cut off of paintings, especially if I'm trying to create something to fit a specific frame. I always use my scrap pieces of paper for practice paintings or trying out different ideas with or color swatches. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about trying to use a sketchbook a little bit more often now than using scrap pieces of paper. So I am using sketchbooks to practice as well, but scrap pieces of paper always come in handy. You can make bookmarks or, like today, paint some mini things on them, so don't throw them away. I think I'll use this slightly larger scrap piece of paper so I can do several mini paintings on one page. And now I don't want to give too much away, but as a sneak peek, I am going to be putting these mini paintings in some little tiny frames that I have here. So I just want to make sure that I'm painting these small enough or large enough so they can fit within these frames. Another benefit of painting mini is that you can just use some of the paint that's already on your palette tray. We might need to pull out a little bit more, but a lot of this leftover paint can be used today. So first up, I'm just going to create a blue-violet mixture using some ultramarine blue and dioxazine purple. It's fairly watered down. This is not going to be too dark yet. And let's try painting a very loose mini hydrangea flower. I'm just going to take the small number 1 round brush and begin dabbing little dots of color into the shape of a circle. The biggest part with this is I'm going to be leaving some white spaces here and there to create some detail. When we're painting tiny, it's really hard to create the detail, but leaving some white spaces can really help with that. And as a side note, I will list in the description of this video links and information for any of the supplies you see me using today, including my painting supplies as well as the later project supplies. That way, if you want to, you can try making one of these for yourself. All right, now that I have the main circle of color here, I'm going to take some more paint, maybe a little bit darker this time. And while that initial paint is still wet, I'll begin adding more color off to the right side and maybe the bottom area of the circle to create some shadow and dimension. Okay, now it's time for the greenery. I will be using olive green paint in actually all of the mini paintings that I do today to just kind of help tie them all together a little bit. So using some olive green paint and a small number 1 round, I'll paint in some very tiny thin stem lines for the hydrangea, as well as maybe some accent greenery. Then for the accent greenery, I'm just going to paint in some little dots of color alongside the stem, and then maybe I will also add in some larger leaves as well using different values of the olive green just to create a bit of interest. And that's actually it for our first mini painting. Super simple and yet super beautiful. I think this should fit some of those frames. I might just double check really quick to make sure I'm on the right track. Oh, this is going to look so good. I cannot wait. Let's do a few more. All right, this time I'm going to use a mixture of alizarin crimson and cadmium orange with a little bit of extra water to create a nice light peach color. This time, let's try painting maybe some peonies for the main flowers. I'm going to start these out with some darker color right at the center of the flower, and then I will continue to spread that color out and around into sort of a circle shape, creating larger and larger petals as I move outward. And once again, make sure you leave some white spaces to create some extra detail. We are painting so tiny, having some white spaces can really help with the look. I'm going to paint 2 of these main flowers, but really you could do as many as you like. And as I keep moving outward and making the petals larger on the outside, I'm also going to try to have them slightly lighter in value. And then I can come back in here to the centers of the flowers with some darker color and add that in while the paint is still wet so that it can kind of blend and spread. And this is just going to create some shadow spaces as well. Okay, I think that's good enough. We're just going to keep these very simple. Now, using some olive green paint, once again, I'm going to add in the stems for the main flowers, as well as some leaves for the greenery, both small and large sizes. And for some extra fun, I think I might also add in some small stalks of peach-colored flowers off to the side. All right, once again, very pretty and yet very simple. Now moving on to the next one, maybe let's try some yellow flowers this time. I've got here some Gamboge paint already on my tray, and this time let's try painting some larger flower stalks. So I'm going to start off by painting in the flowers or even flower buds in a way that I can later add in some center main stems. Those are really simple, again, just some blobs of yellow color. But now to tie everything together, I'll take some of that olive green paint and add in the middle center stem lines for each of these flower stalks, and then I can come back in here and connect the buds to those stalks. Then to finish this off, I'll add a touch of greenery in here with maybe some small green dots along some stem lines, as well as some larger leaves at the base. Okay, very good. Now I plan to do 8 of these little mini paintings, so that's 3 down, so let's move on. I might switch over to the number 2 brush this time and pull out a little bit of ultramarine blue, and this time let's paint in some pretty blue roses. I'm actually going to be painting these in a really similar way that we did with the peony flowers, starting a little bit with darker color in the center, and then continually moving outward, getting the flower strokes larger and lighter as we go. And don't forget to leave in those white spaces as well. I'll go ahead and paint 2 of these roses sitting right next to each other, and you're going to want to add in some of that darker blue color into those centers of the flowers to make them stand out better. I really hope you're enjoying this tutorial so far. These little mini paintings are so much fun. They're kind of carefree and stress-free because we're painting so small. We don't have to worry about a lot of those details. And I cannot wait for you to see the finished product of these. If you find you are enjoying my painting and teaching style today, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. Okay, good enough. Let's go ahead and take some of that olive green paint and start adding in some leaves. I might start with some larger leaves first and see how that goes. Okay, since we're just playing this by ear, maybe I will pull out the number 1 round once again and add in some smaller leaf branches as well. This looks pretty good, but I do feel like it's missing a little something, so maybe I'll take some of that ultramarine blue and add in some really small blue flower stalks in here and there as well. For the next flowers, let's try a darker purple. So this is some dioxazine purple here. And let's try some flower stalks once again. I'm going to pattern these ones a little bit after a delphinium flower. So I'll start at the top with some smaller buds, and then as I move downward, I'll create some more larger side or open facing flowers. And I'll probably paint 2 or 3 of these flower stalks. Now that I have the flowers painted on, I'll take some of that olive green paint and add in the stems of the stalks, also connecting the flowers to the stems. And then lastly, I'll add in some very small leaves and maybe some very thin grass lines at the bottom of this one. All right, only 3 more to go and we are doing good. I think I'd like to try another rose. So I'm going to switch over to maybe the number 2 round once again. I'll paint this a little bit larger and just do 1 large rose right in the center of a flower spray. This rose is just going to be painted in the same way that we've been doing the others. Now taking some olive green paint, I'll go ahead and add in some greenery, starting with some leaf branches. And with some of the leaves that you see me doing today, to add in some extra detail, I've been leaving some tiny white spaces in the centers of the leaves as well. That is a good start. I might also add in some little rosebuds off to the side this time for some extra fun. After I have a few buds in place, then I can add in some greenery around the buds as well as add in some stems, connecting the buds to the main rose to finish everything off. All right, good enough. Moving on, let's try something a little bit different this time. I think I'd like to try some plants in a little pot. So I'm just going to take some watered down ivory black and burnt umber mixture that's already on my tray here, and I'm keeping it fairly light in value by keeping this watered down. Then I'll paint in a shape of a little plant pot or vase. While this is still a little bit wet, I might add in some extra color off to one side of the pot to create some shadow. I might even take just some really watered down brown or black paint color and add a tiny bit of shadow on the ground underneath the pot. Now using some olive green, I'm just going to start painting in some greenery coming out of the pot. I can do branches of leaves in different shapes or different sizes, as well as different values. We can paint in grass or leaf stems, just whatever you want to try. Just fill up that space for the pot. Well, that actually turned out pretty good. I kind of like how it looks. In fact, I think I'm going to do one more potted plant. This time I'd like to create the pot or vase in an ultramarine blue color. Again, I'm going to start out with a very basic shape in a watered down paint color, and then while it's still wet, I'll add some darker blue into the pot to create the shadow and dimension. The shadow I'm creating underneath this pot is a little bit darker than I'd like, but that's okay. I can just take my paper towel and dab some of that off. And actually for this pot, I'm just going to do some green plants just like I did with the first one. There we have it, 8 fantastic and beautiful little mini paintings that are really not too hard to do and turned out really good. This was super fun, but now if you'd like to see my cool project that I am going to make using these mini paintings, then stick around because you are about to be amazed. So here you can see I've got my mini paintings. They are all completed. So the next step to our project is finding the right mini frames that we can put them in. I just bought these off of Amazon. They're really pretty and there's lots of options. And I will put the link for these in the description of this video. But at this point, I'm just going to pick out some frames that I like and that fit the different paintings and their shapes and sizes. Once as I kind of have the frames picked out for each little painting, then I'm going to cut out the watercolor paintings to fit inside the frame. To help me do that, I might take a pencil and just draw a really light pencil line around the inside of the frames so I can get an idea of about how big to cut these. Now, after I have each painting marked for the frame, I'm going to cut them out, but I'm not cutting them along the line I drew. I'm going to give it some space so that I have room to glue each of these paintings into the frame. In other words, you're going to want to cut it larger than the pencil line drawing we just made. That just kind of gives us an idea of about how big to make these without having extra paper showing on the outside of the frame. Then I'm going to take a good eraser and erase the little pencil marks that I made earlier so they don't show through. Now I'm just going to take some hot glue and put a little bit of glue at the very edges of the paper so I can glue them inside the frame. If you're wondering, I just have this little extra piece of paper here to make sure I do not glue them to my table. I'll just do this to each and every one of these paintings until they're all framed, and I'm turning them over upside down right now to make sure that that hot glue is nice and dry before I place them on my table. And look at this, here's our final reveal of all our framed mini paintings. Aren't they so cute? They look so good. The frames really accent the paintings so nicely too. Okay, time to move on because this is not the end of the project. Let me show you what we're going to do with these framed mini watercolor paintings next. I have here a shadow box frame, which is basically a frame that has a really wide inside between the glass so that you can put thicker objects inside your frame. I got this frame specifically because it has an easy front opening feature using magnets. With this project I'm doing, we may need to be able to open and close this easily, and you'll see why in just a minute. Now this frame already has a fabric backing on it, which you could totally just leave as is if you want to. I did want to make mine look a little bit more attractive, so I'm actually going to pull out some red scrapbook paper that I just had right here at home, and I'm actually going to cut it to the size of the frame and glue that on the inside. If you choose to create your own colorful backing, then you can use whatever color you want. I just thought that the red really made my painting stand out good. All right, now that I have my paper backing glued in here, I'm going to take my framed mini watercolor pictures and start playing around with the arrangement of how I want them to be placed on the backing. You'll notice I am leaving a little bit of extra space at the bottom area of the frame. Now I'm just going to take some hot glue and glue these right into place. All right, next up, for a fun feature that I also got on Amazon, I found some tiny lights, sort of like can lights or spotlights. This particular package actually came with some rows of fairy lights as well. These might work easier to turn on and off with this project, but I really liked the look of the spotlights. So these are what I'm going to use. The neat thing is that they actually work. Just take that little paper out of the side here and you can twist it and the lights turn on. Now you can use as many or as few of these as you want. I'm going to use about 5 of them. And then using the little sticky dots that also came with the lights, I'm going to use the sticky dots and place them on the bottoms of the spotlight. And then I can stick those right onto the top of the shadow box frame just like this. And actually, this is why I purposefully picked a shadow box that could open and close really easily, because I'm going to want to be able to open and close this to turn these lights on and off. Let me just turn on all of these for you so you can check it out. But doesn't this look so cool? And this is actually not all there is to this. There's one more thing that we need to do to finish this project off, and I think you're going to love it. So next up, I bought a little package of miniature people. The paint job on these is not great, but that's okay. We actually only need the back portion of the people to be showing. So I'm going to sort of sort through here and pick out the ones that I like. This package did come with a lot of people that are sitting down, which I'm not going to use for this project. So I did actually give a whole bunch of these to my daughter to play with, and she was thrilled. If you had a little bench or something for them to sit on, then you could totally use those though. Now, after I've picked out a few of the people that I like, I'm going to sort of arrange them onto the frame with how I think they would look good. Then I'll take some super glue and stick that right onto the bottom of the people's feet and glue them into the bottom of the frame. You're just going to want to make sure that the back of the people is facing you. And I will say, when I was looking for these miniature people, I actually came across a full kit on Amazon that you can buy and basically create this exact same thing without having to get all the separate parts and pieces. I'll leave a link for that in the description of this video as well, because it is a little bit cheaper than getting all the parts and pieces separately. But the reason why I chose to buy them separate is because that way I could pick and choose which items were the best or had the best painting job or whatever. Plus, the frame that came in the singular kit was not going to be easily opened. So it would definitely be harder to turn the lights on and off in the kit. The kit I saw also only came with 2 lights, and reading through some of the reviews, it sounded like the miniature people that came in the kit were mostly sitting down, and I really wanted to have more than 2 lights, and I wanted to be able to pick out the best people and have them standing up in this project. But if you'd like to make this mini art museum a little bit easier and less expensive, then that kit might be the way to go. So I'll be honest, I actually had a little bit of trouble here. It might have just been because of the glue I was using and it wasn't drying very quickly, and some of the people's feet weren't very flat either. So I did have some issues with some of these people tipping over before the glue was dry. I tried to make it work several times and really struggled, so in the end I pulled out the hot glue gun to finish gluing these in here, and that seemed to work much better. All right, doesn't this look so cute? I've got all of my people all glued in here. And now one last thing that I'm going to add to this that I actually designed with my son's help. He printed this out for me from his 3D printer, but I have here a sign that says Liesl's Art Museum that I'm going to add right to the front to really finish this off. So let me just turn on all of these lights so you can see the awesome effect that this creates. And then right on the front, I'll go ahead and glue on my sign. And there we have it. Isn't this just the cutest thing? It's seriously the coolest thing I think I've ever made. I absolutely love it. I'm going to be storing and keeping this in my art studio to look at. However, I feel like I might want to make another one to put in the house as well. The good news is that since I did buy all of the items separately, I actually have enough of everything that I could totally make another one. For the final reveal, let me just show you how it looks when it starts to get a little bit darker in the day. Having the lights on in this little gallery looks so cool and it really stands out. I'm absolutely in love with it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. And maybe if you feel up to it, you can create your own little mini art museum. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.